r/AskReddit. Redditors. What's the most cruel thing you've ever done? This actually just happened yesterday. My grandma has been fighting cancer for 6 years. First it started in her breast, and she had them removed. But then it spread to her bones and skull. Right now she's living with my uncle, aunt, and their children. But none of them seem to really care about her. Now, she's always been able to do things for herself, but for the past couple of weeks it's been hard for her. No one told us, and when we came to visit she only weighed 88 pounds and was looking really bad. She told us no one came into her room for a week, and she had eaten not one thing. So my mom told me that I was staying to take care of her. I absolutely didn't want to because this family is absolutely horrible to each other, and I didn't want to deal with their bratty ass kids or their incessant gossiping and psychotic ways. So last night I was packing my things and my grandma kept looking at me and saying, "I'm so happy you're staying." As a sort of desperate plea, I loaded my last suitcase into the car, and then she gave me the most defeated look I've ever seen and choked out. "But if you leave, grandma will cry," and just started weeping. I've never seen her cry. She's such a strong woman and never once complained about the chemo, radiation, surgeries or anything. So now I'm staying. I would have backpacked my 88-pound grandma right the duck out of there. Call Duck-I-Nell the social services. Starvation is unacceptable. Period. I straight up threatened to end my stepfather when he tried to pull his emotional manipulative bullshit, trying to get my own grandmother to keep financially supporting them while she was recovering in the hospital from a fall. There are only a few times I allow that black rage to consume me, and that day was one of them. Calling elder social services ensures that when you leave, a social worker will continue to come out and confirm that your grandma is getting the care she deserves. Can't upvote this enough. There are things in place to prevent this kind of neglect. Done to myself. But my sister scratched my face, but it didn't leave a mark. I really wanted her to get in trouble. So I ended up scratching myself really hard as evidence, and my mom still didn't believe me. So now I just have a little scar on my cheek from all those years ago. Damn. That's hardcore. Just like Reddit's standards for siblings. Drove my college girlfriend to an on-campus party. In her car. I had the keys. Found out at the party she was cheating on me with a guy that was a friend at the party. Told her to GTFO. As she walked down the street at night, I pounded her ear in the front yard. Realized I still had her car/dorm keys. Said, "Hey, you forgot your keys," and threw them at her. She was maybe 40 or 50 yards away. Under a street light. Keys hit her in the back of the head, and she dropped like a sack. I instantly felt terrible. And still do 25 years later. Her dropping like a rock under the street light without even making a sound is still stuck in my head. Even though she cheated. That wasn't called for. We are good now. All is forgiven. Edit after questions. I cheesed the distance on Google Maps. It was just under 100 feet. About 30 yards. Runk. 19-year me thought it was 1 yard. I father. Wow dude. Excellent throw. 40 or 50 yards? Yeah, that was meant to happen. I broke a girl's heart in the worst way. I met this girl online. I can't remember which app. But a nice girl she was. We went out for drinks on our first date to a local Mexican restaurant nearby where I lived. We had one drink each. Ate really quick, and went back to my place for some much needed time for the both of us. The deed was done, so she left happy, and I was happy. We continued this for a while, except I didn't claim her as a girlfriend. As much as she claimed me as a boyfriend. I'm not the relationship type of person. But I played along, just to sleep around with her. After about a month of a nearly daily Excel encounter with this young lady, she calls me one mid-afternoon. She tells me that she's pregnant. And internally I'm pissed. Mainly at myself for bringing this upon me. I really didn't like this girl that much. Yet here I am, about to have a child with her. So I figure to myself, I'll just stay with her until she has the baby. Then we'll split after and figure this child support hit. Well, a few weeks after the news, and pretending I'm excited to be a dad, she calls me up crying. She's sobbing and telling me she had her period and went to the doctor and they said she had lost the baby. She was devastated and was blaming herself. While I tried to console her, I dumped her the week after. I told her that I was never really feeling what she felt at all. She let me have it. And I deserved it. I still feel horrible about it 3 years later. I broke her heart like a jackass that I told myself I'd never become. I haven't talked to her since. But I wish her the best. You did the right thing. *an alternative a world *were *no1 *has *feelings. Can I post that reply in this thread? My friend confessed his feelings about me. Then I laughed at him. I bet he didn't ask out other girls for years. Hell. He might still be alone. This hit happened to me years ago. I haven't asked anyone out since. As a child, I remember my mother taking my sister and I through McD's drive-thru and ordering us each a burger and fries. We were fairly poor back then. But mom splurged and let us each have the treat. When we got to the window, my sister and I started whining about it not being Happy Meals and not getting a toy. In the grand scheme of things, it's not necessarily cruel as a child is thoughtlessly cruel to their parents. But as an adult I die on the inside when I realize how humiliated my mother must have been to have not been able to afford the Happy Meals. And some nice teenager in the window gave the boxes and toys to her. I apologized to her a few months ago for being such an ungrateful hit. And bless the woman. She doesn't even remember, and here I've been cringing off and on for the last 2 decades over it. I cringe when I think of all the thoughtless, ungrateful things I said or did to my parents when I was a kid. I'd like to think neither of my folks remember any of it. Or if they did they wouldn't have held it against me and put it down to kids being kids. I miss my mum and dad. Honestly. I think as a parent a lot of that goes in one ear and out the other. I did my fair share of ungrateful things as a young kid and into my teens. And I'm pretty sure that my mom doesn't remember any of it. And she's a fiery, vengeful, little ego woman who tells her 2 sons that are over 6 feet tall that she brought us into this world. She will take us out of it. Made a yo mama joke to someone whose mum recently passed away. Still cringe years later. That's why I would just joke about people's faces. You can always know if there's something seriously wrong there. On a similar note, I once started a conversation by commenting that a soda on display expired in April. It derailed into this between 2 friends. Him, your car expired in April. Her, your face expired in April. Him, your cat expired in April. Her, your dad expired in April. Him, he actually did. I always just say yeah and repeat what they had said. Sometimes it doesn't work out that well though. Them, that cat's so far. Me, you're so fat. Edit, I meant to say the cat is fat, but I'm going to leave it. I beat a man until he was blind in his left eye. Not a day goes by where I don't feel regret about it. Does this have a story, or do you just go around beating up left eyes? The dude was stealing from my truck and was whacked out on some drug. He seemed like a threat, but I pushed it way too far like a piece of hit. I was coldly and cruelly honest to a woman I got pregnant because I didn't want her to keep the baby. When I was around 30 I was casually sleeping with a woman a few years my senior. I knew she likely wanted something more, but it was just a casual thing for me. One day she told me that she was pregnant with my baby. She said she didn't know what she wanted to do with it. Her look was both scared and hopeful. As soon as she told me I felt an iciness take over me and my whole demeanor changed. While I acknowledged that it was her ultimate choice what to do with her body, I told her that I did not want to have a child with her. I said to her in no uncertain terms that we were not going to get married and that we were not going to be a couple. I continued that any romantic relationship that we had is now over. I'll let her know that if she decided to keep the baby and if it was proven to be mine, a really cruel statement to make, I would be financially responsible and have a relationship with the child, but I would only deal with her at arm's length concerning the child. I ended it by saying something to the effect of if you keep the baby you will be a single mother and you will probably then be single forever. It was so cold. I got what I wanted, but I'll never forgive myself for how I utterly ripped this woman apart at an incredibly vulnerable time. This is legitimately disgusting. The first part isn't so bad, but then you tell the women she'll never find love. That isn't honest, that's just calculated cruelty. I don't know why people always try to make ops feel better. But this guy is a ducking piece of shit. Duck this asshole. Told my identical twin sister that I see her as nothing more than a person who I happen to look like. She's obsessed with having a sisterly relationship with me, and I can't even find myself telling her I love her. Just putting that down in this text box is weird for me. This is super interesting to me. I'm an identical twin myself, and I'll be honest, our relationship has always been rocky. We've spent as long as 8 months not talking to each other over stupid shit. Luckily, now that we live almost 30 minutes away, we have never been closer. I have also noticed that with a lot of twin, their relationship is either inseparable or rocky. Why do you feel the way you do with your C's? Also an identical twin, and my brother and I used to say the most horrible, hurtful things to each other. We had a rocky relationship, me being addicted to opiates and him more or less watching me die. When he started smoking pot after my addiction wasn't controlling me, it got better. We became closer than ever, and then he up and moved to Duckine, China. He is literally halfway across the world right now, and we talk more than we ever have. I'm chronically ill. When I was younger, we didn't know what was wrong with me. Weekday mornings were awful, because I was in an exorbitant amount of pain and, more often than not, could not go to school. I would relay this to my mom, who would insist nothing was wrong with me and that I needed to get up and go. This was shortly after moving to the other end of the state and starting middle school. So I became extremely depressed. One day, while sobbing, I told my mom she was the reason I didn't want to live anymore. Of course, it wasn't her fault. And that's not what I really meant. I was just a kid in too much pain. Somewhat similar to you. My mom never really believed how ill I was. Even after I got diagnosis after diagnosis of all the things wrong. I remember bawling in front of her in pain and depression. And she asked what I needed. And I was just like, I need you to care and to believe me. And she just stood there in silence until I was finally like, okay then. And walked away. Duck. That hits home. I got so tired of going to hospital and doctors and my mother/family treating me like I was lying. I pretended I was lying just to get them to leave me alone. When I collapsed later and got my proper diagnosis, I told the truth about my lie. However that works. My mom felt like it after that, I guess. A runt of a girl I went to high school with had a massive obsession/crush on Patrick Swayze. Well, the day he died, my buddies and I were sitting in the hall at school and just eating lunch. The girl sat with her friends down the hall and was being her loud, ignorant self. So, the following conversation happened. Me, hey, aunt girl, this is her name for the story. Aunt Cheryl, what the duck do you want? Me, Patrick Swayze died today. Insert my friends, and I dying of laughter. Aunt Cheryl, no he didn't. Insert her friends confirming said fact. And her breaking down into tears and letting out the loudest wails of sadness you can imagine. She was pretty upset for the next few days. And she had recently dated one of my buddies at the time and cheated on him. So being the person that I was, I decided to escalate the Swayzeness and continue on with the chaos. My buddy and I, let's call him Jacob, we drew a picture of a rather rotted and emaciated looking Patrick Swayze hanging from a tree and wrote a super awful joke, which is as follows. Why do they call it Dirty Dancing? Because he's 6 feet under. And then we slipped the picture into her locker with our names scribbled into a giant heart carved into said tree. She saw it, got super angry, and I guess had some kind of fit in front of her locker. She wasn't at school for like a week after that. Yeah. I feel bad about that, somewhat. Edit. Wow. Thanks for the gold. Why do they call it Dirty Dancing? Because he's 6 feet under. Lost it. I once hijacked a tricycle from a girl in pre-K, had to assert my dominance. Were you in pre-K at the time? Or was it like, the girl was pre-K and you were 34? He meant today. He wrote this post while pedaling like the wind.